Welcome to Cheat Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. I borrowed my wife's phone to film our daughter's softball game. A notification appeared from an app one didn't recognize. I told myself I was probably misunderstanding. I wasn't. And in the 30 seconds it took to read what was on that screen, 13 years of a life I believed in completely came apart. My name isn't important. What matters is this. I'm 38 years old. I've been married to Bethany for 13 years. We met at a college house party when we were 25. She was laughing at something her friend said, and I couldn't take my eyes off her. We fell hard, spent every possible moment together, and got married right after graduation. Those early years were solid. The kind of relationship other couples looked at and envied. We both had good jobs, were building something real, and had 2 daughters, Lily and Emma, who became the center of everything. When Bethany's father died suddenly of a heart attack at 59, she stepped up and took over his industrial manufacturing company almost overnight. I watched her transform from a mid-level employee into a CEO in months. She was impressive. I was genuinely proud of her. Within 18 months she had doubled revenue, expanded into new markets, and her salary had passed mine by a significant margin. But our daughters were suffering. Lily was acting out at school. Emma had become anxious and clingy. 2 working parents never home. Something had to give. We sat at the kitchen table one night and had the honest conversation. Bethany's company couldn't function without her. She had built every client relationship, understood every technical specification, had a vision nobody else could execute. It made sense for me to be the one to step back. I agreed without much hesitation. I was burning out from the corporate grind anyway. And the idea of being home with my daughters, being the one they ran to after school, having dinner ready when Bethany walked through the door, genuinely appealed to me. So I became a stay-at-home dad. And I gave it everything. School drop-offs and pickups. Lunches with handwritten notes inside. Cooking from scratch every night. Cleaning, laundry, yard work, home repairs learned from YouTube tutorials. Room parent for both girls' classes. Soccer practice, dance class, every playdate. I ran the entire domestic operation, and I ran it well. When Bethany came home at 7 or 8, I had a glass of wine waiting, dinner ready, the house clean, the kids bathed with homework done. For a while, it worked beautifully. Then about a year ago, something shifted. She started making cutting remarks. "Do you even do anything all day? Or maybe you should get a real job instead of playing house," said with a dismissive tone that made my blood boil. Because I had a real job before, a good one, where I was respected and valued. I gave it up for our family. For her. For our daughters. The closeness disappeared too. I figured it was stress. The pandemic had created supply chain nightmares for her company. I gave her space. Took on more. Tried to anticipate everything before she had to ask. Nothing worked. If anything, she seemed to resent me more with each passing week. Then came the softball game. I'd forgotten my phone at home that morning. Bethany had been glued to hers all weekend anyway, barely looking up even when Lily was asking her questions about the game. So when I asked to borrow it for a few minutes to record some footage for my parents in Oregon, she handed it over without protest and went to grab snacks from the concession stand. I was filming Lily at bat, watching that concentrated look on her face, the one she gets when she's really trying, when a notification appeared on the screen. A messaging app one didn't recognize. The preview showed something explicit that I couldn't quite read clearly. I told myself I was misunderstanding. I opened it. My hands started shaking. There was a man from Bethany's company named Jackson, 8 years younger than me, and they had been exchanging explicit messages, photos, and videos for what looked like months. Detailed conversations about what they had done together, when they could meet next, how much they needed each other. And then they talked about me. He called me a pathetic house husband who couldn't satisfy his woman. Said I was weak and emasculated. Made jokes about me doing laundry and cooking while he was sleeping with my wife. Bethany agreed with him. Laughed about how I'd become weak and useless. Said I wasn't the man she married anymore. Said things like he's more like a nanny than a husband, and I need a real man, not someone who bakes cookies for school fundraisers. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. My vision actually blurred for a second. I heard Bethany's footsteps crunching back on the gravel. I closed the app, kept the phone steady, kept filming, though my hands were shaking so badly I knew the footage was unusable. I handed her phone back when she returned. I said nothing. I smiled at Lily when she got a hit. The drive home was silent except for the girls chattering about the game in the back seat. Oblivious. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. That night in bed, for the first time in months, Bethany tried to initiate. She rolled over, put her hand on my chest, started kissing my neck. I told her I wasn't in the mood, my voice flat and cold. She snapped immediately. Said if I was going to be moody and difficult, I could go sleep on the couch. I got up, grabbed my pillow, and moved to the guest bedroom. I've been there ever since. She hasn't asked why. Hasn't seemed to care. I spent the night staring at the ceiling, running through every scenario. By morning, I had a plan. First, I screenshotted everything. Every message, every photo, every video, every cruel comment about me. Saved it all to a cloud account she didn't have access to, organized by date. Irrefutable and comprehensive. Then I called a law firm in the next town over to keep things discreet. They had a last-minute opening. I dropped the girls at school, told them I loved them, and drove there with my stomach in knots. The attorney was a woman named Rebecca Thornton, sharp, experienced, with kind eyes that had clearly seen hundreds of situations like mine. I showed her everything. She took her time reviewing it without expression. When she finished, she looked up and said simply, "This is going to work heavily in your favor." She outlined what I could expect. Child support. Alimony. The house. Bethany would need to cover the mortgage as long as the girls lived there. Additional funds for retraining since I'd been out of the workforce for years and my professional network had largely dissolved. She advised me not to seek employment until after the divorce was finalized. Having income would change the calculations significantly. Then she asked if I wanted full custody. The question hit hard because it made everything real. I told her I didn't mind Bethany seeing the girls occasionally on weekends. That despite everything, she was still their mother and they loved her. But I wanted primary custody because I was the one who had been raising them. I knew their routines, their teachers, their friends, their fears, and their dreams. Rebecca nodded and mentioned something else, that since Jackson had apparently been in our home, around my daughters, I had an even stronger case. The thought made me physically ill. She told me to keep quiet about everything until the paperwork was ready. Act normal. Avoid arguments. Continue sleeping separately. Trust the process. She also suggested an STD test and paternity tests for both girls. I asked why, voice probably betraying my panic. She said these situations are rarely isolated incidents. I needed to protect myself and know the full truth. I went through with all of it. STD results came back clean. The paternity tests confirmed I was the biological father of both girls. I had never been so relieved in my life, even though I had never seriously doubted it. Seeing it confirmed in writing still mattered more than I can explain. Bethany was served with divorce papers at her workplace. According to my lawyer, it didn't go well. She was also served with an order to vacate the house. My lawyer handled the logistics. I was granted temporary full custody of both girls. My oldest knew something was wrong immediately. One of her friend's parents had been through a divorce, so she had some framework for it. She cried and begged me to let her mom come home. It broke my heart. My youngest just kept asking for her mommy and couldn't understand why she wasn't there. I felt like the worst father in the world, even though I knew, rationally, that none of this was my fault. Part of me wondered whether I should just let things go and keep the family together for the girls' sake. But I couldn't do that. I couldn't model that kind of relationship for my daughters. Couldn't teach them that love meant accepting betrayal quietly. Bethany moved in with her mother. My mother-in-law called and asked to meet. She didn't ask for details, just begged me not to take her granddaughters away from her. I told her she was a wonderful grandmother, and as long as she could separate her daughter's mistakes from her relationship with the girls, she'd always be welcome in their lives. She thanked me with tears in her eyes. Bethany kept calling and texting constantly. My lawyer helped me set up a communication channel strictly for discussing the girls, nothing else. It stayed professional and limited. Thanksgiving came. My mother-in-law asked if we could all have dinner together for the sake of the girls. My lawyer said it was fine with clear ground rules. I agreed because the girls had been begging to see their mother. When we arrived, Bethany hugged the girls normally. Then she tried to hug and kiss me. I stepped aside and greeted my mother-in-law instead. Throughout dinner, she acted like we were still a happy couple, trying to engage me in conversations about Christmas plans and family vacations. I kept my responses short and helped with cooking and cleanup instead. Before bed, she cornered me in the hallway, crying and begging for another chance. My mother-in-law appeared, pulled her away firmly, and told me good night. The girls started therapy. The first session went well. The second was harder. The therapist had explained the separation to them in age-appropriate terms, and they came out sobbing, clinging to me. When we got home, they wouldn't let go. We ordered takeout, watched movies, and all stayed together in my room until they fell asleep. Then I went to the bathroom and completely fell apart. I decided to reach out to Jackson's wife. I found his contact information in some of Bethany's work documents and called the number. His wife answered. When I told her about the affair, she didn't believe me and hung up. She called back an hour later and asked to meet. We met in a parking lot. I showed her all the evidence. She broke down immediately, asking how he could have done this to her. Then she told me something that made everything hit differently. She removed her wig. She had been battling cancer. Over the past year and a half, she had undergone 2 surgeries and chemotherapy. While she was in the hospital fighting for her life, her husband had been sleeping with my wife. They hadn't been intimate for nearly 2 years because of her pregnancy complications and treatment. She had finally beaten the disease and was just beginning to feel like herself again. She had wanted to surprise her husband. Discovering the affair had destroyed that completely. She cried about her child growing up in a broken home. We exchanged numbers and stayed in touch in the days that followed. 2 people processing the same kind of betrayal from different angles, finding a strange comfort in the fact that someone else understood exactly what it felt like. Bethany left me a note asking to meet one last time in public before the divorce was finalized. I agreed. We met at the park where we used to bring the girls. I recorded everything. Most of the conversation was about the children, and she actually acknowledged it was better for them to stay with me full-time. I failed as a mother, she said. I need to figure out how to do it right. Then she asked if we could call off the divorce. Go to counseling. Try again. I didn't hesitate to say no. I reminded her of everything. The messages. The photos. The things she had laughed about with him. The way she had let him mock me while I was raising her children. I brought up the trauma she had caused our daughters. I asked her directly, "Do you really think you deserve a second chance?" She admitted she didn't. Then something unexpected happened. Out of nowhere, she blurted out, "I wanted to be the one at home." I asked her what she meant. She spilled everything. She had never wanted to run her father's company. She had wanted me to take it over. She had dreamed of being a stay-at-home wife and mother, cooking, caring for the girls, having me as the breadwinner. She had never wanted the long hours and the stress and the weight of running a business in a male-dominated industry. I asked why she had told me she wanted to run it, why she had asked me to quit. She said she had wanted me to insist on taking it over, that she was too proud to say what she actually wanted. She thought I would figure it out on my own. I sat with that for a moment. You wanted me to read your mind. That's what all of this was about. She nodded. She said during the pandemic, working those hours while watching me at home with the girls, she grew jealous and angry. Jackson had noticed her resentment and started feeding it, telling her that if I were a real man, she could stay home. That's how it started. He had manipulated her jealousy into something worse, and she had let him. All of this, she said, could have been avoided if we had communicated better from the start. Then she told me one more thing. Late last year, she had been pregnant with his child. She had made a decision alone and told no one. Not her mother. Not anyone. She had been carrying that in addition to everything else. I got up and left without saying another word. The divorce was finalized in early July. The settlement reflected everything Rebecca had outlined. Primary custody with me. The house. Support payments. Limited visitation for Bethany. 2 weekends per month, alternating holidays. Jackson never resurfaced. He had confronted Bethany at her workplace after the papers were filed and physically attacked her when she threatened to call the police. Co-workers intervened and held him until officers arrived. He was bailed out and disappeared. His parents claimed they didn't know where he had gone. He never faced consequences for any of it beyond the night he was arrested. Bethany had pressed charges, then dropped them when he threatened a countersuit. Then he vanished. My daughters adjusted slowly. They still had difficult moments, especially my oldest, who went through a period where she seemed to be withdrawing from everything. After careful conversations with her doctor and therapist, we agreed on the lowest possible medication dosage to help stabilize things. Gradually, as the months passed and the routine became familiar, she improved. My youngest was more resilient than I expected. She missed her mother, said so openly, but accepted the reality with a quiet clarity that children sometimes have that adults don't. Bethany got help. She started rebuilding her relationship with the girls slowly. Therapy, scheduled visits, genuine effort. It was strained and careful and took time. But it was real. I went back to the gym. Started taking online courses to update skills that had gone dormant during the years I was home. Eventually found part-time work flexible enough to keep me present for the girls. The professional path would take time to rebuild fully, but it was moving forward. The woman I had met in a parking lot during the worst week of my life, we talked almost daily throughout those months. We took things cautiously and carefully, both of us aware that healing isn't linear and that two people in pain can't rush into certainty. But something genuine was developing. Something built on honesty and mutual understanding rather than performance. Life after something like this doesn't go back to what it was. It can't. Too much has changed. Too many things have been seen clearly that can't be unseen. But I want to be honest about what I actually learned. I learned that staying quiet about what you want, really want, doesn't protect anyone. Bethany wanted something she was too proud to say out loud. She wanted a different life than the one she was living. And instead of saying it, she resented me for not reading her mind. Let that resentment be manipulated into something that destroyed everything. If she had said, "I want to stay home, I want you to figure out a different path, I want something to change," we could have had that conversation. Maybe we would have found an answer. Maybe we wouldn't have. But it would have been honest. And honesty, even when it's hard, is survivable. Silence isn't. I learned that the things people say in private reveal who they actually are. The messages I read on that phone weren't said in anger during a fight. They were said casually, laughingly, between two people who thought nobody was watching. She agreed with a man who mocked me for being a present father, called me weak for cooking dinner, called me less than a man for caring about our children's lives. And she laughed. That told me more about who she had become than anything she ever said to my face. I learned that my daughters were watching everything, even when I thought they weren't. They absorbed the tension before I said a word. They felt the change in the house before I explained it. And when the truth came out, as it always does, they processed it with more strength than I expected. Children are more resilient than we give them credit for, and more aware. I learned that starting over at 38, with outdated skills, a dissolved professional network, a broken family, and a confidence that had been systematically undermined for years, is genuinely difficult. And also survivable. My daughters know their dad shows up. That's not nothing. That's everything, actually. The woman I'm building something with now understands what it means to have trusted someone completely and been betrayed. We move slowly. We communicate directly. We don't assume the other person will figure out what we mean. We say it. It's simple in a way that our previous lives weren't. I gave 13 years to a marriage I believed in. I gave up a career, a professional identity, years of forward momentum, for a family I thought we were building together. And she threw it away for a man who disappeared the moment things got complicated. The ending isn't what I planned. But the life I have now is honest. And after everything, that's the only thing that matters. Thank you for watching.